Okay. Are we all ready? Yep, it all seems to be working. Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to this meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Management Committee. We will go straight into any apologies for absence.
Yes, Chair, we have apologies from Beth Rowland, from Dave Edmonds, and Catherine Glover. Beth is being substituted by Carol Gill.
Great, thank you very much. Next item is meetings of the previous meeting held on the 5th of November. Are there any issues or matters arising from that? If not, as I wasn't at the meeting, can we have a show of hands to accept? Any to the contrary? Nope, good, right, thank you very much. Moving on, declarations of interest. Does any member have any interest to declare in any of the items on the agenda tonight? Nope. Public question time? Do we have any public questions? No. Town and parish council question time? Nope. Finally, councillor question time. Going to assume that is no. Right. Next item on the agenda is the Q2 25-26 KPI performance report, page 9 of the pack. George, am I looking your way or am I looking... Oh, sorry. Stephen.
I'm just going to say a few words of introduction, if I may, Mark, and then hand over to Emily and Louise to do all the difficult bits and the hard work. I suppose just a couple of very familiar points to begin with, caveats, I suppose, which we always ought to bear in mind when we think about KPIs. The first is that obviously some of the KPIs here, we actually have very limited control over performance in them. The one that always strikes me is the one relating to crime levels, that our influence over levels of crime in the borough is necessarily rather marginal. We are one player, but we're certainly not the biggest and most important when it comes to crime prevention. And the second point, I suppose, is that small changes, very small statistical changes from quarter to quarter can lead to seemingly large shifts from one colour coding to another. So it's just always best to bear in mind that, whether things are going up or down, it can be a very small margin that is the difference between the two. And my final point really is to draw attention to the achievements listed on pages 9 to 10, mainly on page 9. And I just really wanted to especially highlight the Adult Social Care Care Quality Commission inspection and the really excellent rating for our council. It's Adult Social Care Services rated one of the best in England. That really is cause, I think, for celebration from all councillors that our adult social care team have performed so strongly, and I think we can all be justifiably proud of their achievement. So I don't know whether it's going to be Louise or Emily who goes next.
Louise, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair and Stephen. Just to add, so this is for Q2 of 25-26. Same number of KPIs, so 61 KPIs over the different directorates that are set out in the appendix. Resources and assets, it starts page 20, place and growth 32, chief execs is 55, children's services is 64, adult services is 74, and public health is 86. Normally the more specific questions are for the first three directorates because there are other overview and scrutiny committees that review children's services, adult social care and public health. But obviously we always take questions back to directorates if required. As the leaders have set out, we've got the key highlights at the beginning of the report. We have 42 green KPIs, 13 amber and 5 red, with a fuller explanation of our red KPIs set out. I think it's on page 12 of your pack. So you can see a bit more detail with regard to what actions are happening to improve things. And the only other thing I just wanted to draw your attention to is on page 16 of your pack, where it just sort of notes where we'll be looking to change the format of the report for Q3. This is off the back of the work we've been doing on the new council plan, and also where we brought it into overview and scrutiny over a period of time, and picked up on a number of points and changes that will be made to the presenting of the report. As I say, we've tried to set those out again on page 16 so everybody can view and see them. But as I say, just wanted to highlight those points. Appreciate that each of the KPIs are set out in the report for your review.
Thank you very much. Is Emily going to say anything? Or no. Any questions from around the room? No? Okay. I actually don't have any questions on this. Does anyone? So there's no questions on this at all? Brilliant. Okay. In which case, the recommendation is to note the performance of the KPIs for Q2, and I think we're getting the next one in March. Okay, and that will be in the new format. Brilliant. Okay. Thank you very much. Right. Moving on. We are going to go to the next item on the agenda, which is an update on the Berkshire Prosperity Board. Stephen.
And thank you very much, Mark. I must admit, expect to be here again, speaking quite so quickly. Let's see whether we can get through this one with as much expedition. I guess the few things I want to say by way of introduction, just to remind you that the Berkshire Prosperity Board was established in 2024. It brings together all of the 6 unitary councils in Berkshire in a collaboration designed really to help us lever in funding for infrastructure and other cross-boundary projects, key infrastructure and other cross-boundary projects. We have a number of established work streams, which are led by each of the councils has one work stream they lead at an elected member level, but they get support from another council in terms of officer support. So in our case, for instance, we have taken on affordable housing as our work stream. So Susan and I lead on that with George, and we get officer help from Bracknell Forest Borough Council. But all of those work streams, I think, are progressing pretty well and starting to make progress. For instance, in our affordable housing work stream, we've had a meeting with Homes England about funding opportunities. I think I can honestly say Wokingham already does pretty well out of Homes England. We've got currently in the pipeline with them, I think, 20 schemes which are due to deliver over 300 houses. That's way in excess of any of the other Berkshire councils in terms of its numbers of houses and numbers of schemes. So I think we're already punching above our weight, but we can do so much more if we work collaboratively together and put in funding bids for projects across the county rather than simply in one area. It's clear that Homes England want to fund collaborative projects more than they want to fund individual councils. And ultimately, they will no doubt want to give more funding to strategic authorities. And that's probably my cue to saying that another function of the Prosperity Board, it's a function it's developed in this last year, is preparing the way for a future mayoral strategic authority. So a lot of the preparatory work is being done in Berkshire by the Berkshire Prosperity Board. In Oxfordshire, there's a comparable body, not exactly the same as our Prosperity Board, but it's also doing preparatory work, and we're obviously trying to link up the operations of these two county-wide bodies. And I finally just want to add what to me is perhaps it's not something you'll see quantifiable in any report. It's the intangible benefits that we get out of having regular and productive and collaborative relationships with other councils in our area. I don't think it's any great surprise that in the past there have been some real tensions between councils in Berkshire. There have been political arguments and big personalities that perhaps found it difficult to get on with some other big personalities. We've reached a happy point where there seems to be much greater cooperation and collaboration, and that's bringing collateral benefits in terms of winning allies for lobbying government, for instance, on areas of common concern. So just to give you an example, we've obviously been doing a lot of lobbying work in relation to the local government three-year finance settlement, which is not good news for Wokingham. It's equally not good news for Bracknell, and Bracknell has worked quite closely with Wokingham on the way we craft the approach to government. And it's helpful, of course, that Bracknell is a Labour-controlled council. They have access to government in ways that we don't have. Equally, that's true of Reading. Reading has been a beneficiary, but only a fairly narrow beneficiary out of this process, and has some concerns about it. And we have been able to work pretty effectively with Reading, despite political differences and despite being on the opposite side of the winners and losers table when it comes to the local government finance settlement. So I just finally wanted to emphasise those collateral benefits that you get from working in collaboration. There are things that come out of the collaboration that you'd never imagine would come out of it when you start the process. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Questions? Shahid.
Thank you, Stephen. I mean, we recognise that a prosperity board is a positive thing, working across the councils and putting all our resources together for the betterment of Berkshire as a whole. You mentioned some of the intangible ones. Is it 2 years now since we've been together as a board? You mentioned 24? Is that?
A little less than 2 years.
Yeah, 2 years, right.
But getting on that way.
My particular interest is this question is employment and skills in Berkshire. Can you perhaps brief us? I know that's not our portfolio, but nevertheless, you're probably aware what's going on in that particular area. Obviously, that's a huge, obviously, concern for a lot of people as well, for youngsters and organizations as well. What progress is being made so far in this particular stream?
Yeah, thanks, Shahid. I know this is a matter of great interest to you. You've raised it on numerous occasions before. And I think George, who's much better able to answer your question than I am, because George has been he's been a major player in helping ensure we're making progress in all the work streams, not just in the one that we as a council have taken on as ours. And I have to say, through George and other officers in this council, I'm very proud that Wokingham has played quite a big shaping role. We're the accountable body for the Berkshire Prosperity Board, which is an indication of confidence in us as a strong council with reliable finances and the mechanisms in place to act as the accountable body. But George will be able to tell you, I think, some actually rather good news on this front.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Chair. So I guess this time last year we just adopted our Berkshire-wide economic strategy. That was in December last year, as in 24, and spent this year making sure we're picking up on all the actions that came from that strategy. Some of those actions, just to give them some kind of reality, I guess, continue to work with the former LEP, now the Berkshire Skills Hub, on their programmes, which are government funded, but overseen by the Prosperity Board. So, for example, Skills Bootcamp, for example, where we are, there's funding available for those to upskill in their work area, whether they're in work or looking for work. I suppose the next kind of tangible example is the Connect to Work programme. And as Stephen was saying, Wokingham, as the accountable body, has led on this project for Berkshire. So Connect to Work, very simply put, government-funded scheme which supports those in a very bespoke way to get back into the workplace or into the workplace where they have barriers, for example, a health barrier. So really working with that individual around those barriers, what work is appropriate for that person, what environment is appropriate for that person to really get that person, the best chance to get back into the workplace. That government-funded programme was launched basically this month, and we are working very closely with DWP on that programme. I feel like I should say the DWP has been absolutely delighted with our work on that as a council, Wokingham and Berkshire wide, because we've I think been an example of how we've really taken the programme forward and put it into a deliverable project. As the year progresses, we'll obviously monitor that, numbers, people, outputs, outcomes, and report back to the Prosperity Board. The third one, maybe as just a third, there are other examples, is the Prosperity's Board work with the business of Berkshire. So having if you like, the gravitas of Berkshire wide. We have a Berkshire Business Board that reports to each of the Prosperity Board meetings on its progress. That's done a lot of work in terms of working across the county area. And an example of a piece of work that they're working on is businesses through the Business Board with the University of Reading and the councils, Berkshire councils, are working on submitting a bid for an innovation fund. So it's called a kind of triple helix approach. So you've got business, university, academia, and civic all coming together to put a bid in for an innovation centre, which will support skills development for the wider Berkshire area. There are other examples, but hopefully that demonstrates not just strategy, but actually implementation on the ground. Chair, if that helps.
Thank you, George, for the elaboration. You're right. What really actually, in my experience, works is the implementation. Strategy is a wonderful document, right? But it's a document unless it's implemented and people see the benefits of that. And I work with a lot of young people, and they find it very difficult, even the graduates, to find their first jobs, especially in the area which they have done their degrees in. So when I speak to the employers, they said, look, we can't get the right people. So here, there's a pool of people, thousands of graduates are coming out, they can't find the jobs. You talk to employers, they're saying, we can't get the right people with the right skill set, therefore we can't employ them, right? And they're not willing to invest in the training of those as perhaps we used to happen before because of the economic climate as well, uncertainty, etc. So it's a catch-22 situation, right? Employers are struggling because they don't have the right people, but the people are struggling, young people, because. So how do you break out of that? And that's what what we need is that breakthrough and perhaps skills. Boot camps is a good thing. I know it's been happening up and down the country as well. Berkshire is not the only one. A lot of other up and down country, the funding is provided, but that's very small, actually funding available. It has not made a dent in the last 2 or 3 years. It's not something new. It's been going on for the last couple of years. But you're talking about small numbers here. It's not going to make a huge dent actually in terms of the demand, etc. So it needs to happen at a bigger scale. Otherwise, we still will be discussing about these issues even 5 years down the line, right, or 10 years down the line. So I'm talking from the practical point of view, what I see on the ground. So I'm just hoping that somehow in Berkshire we will be able to find a breakthrough, especially for our young people, who can actually really find the path for that. But also the second point you mentioned is connecting to work. That's another work stream. People in their sort of 40s and 50s, sometimes they struggle. They haven't got the skills which they need as well. So again, it comes to skill, because obviously with the technology, everything is automation and all the stuff which we talk about. There is not much funding available for that either. How do they get upskilled? There is no guidance, there's no mentoring, there's no funding, So there's a huge, bottlenecks, one at the lower end, right, but also at the upper end as well. So I'm not expecting you to give a solution, but I'm just highlighting there's a huge issues here on the ground level when you talk to people, to our residents, and through my business and obviously connections as well.
Yeah.
And it is really struggle. And there's so much huge amount of frustration amongst the public.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, and it's, if it was easy, we would have fixed it by now. But certainly, I think if you look at, say, the work that's been done by the Berkshire Skills Hub in terms of the offer for training and support and skilling up, that's certainly one area. It's right that we listen to business, because I think, as you say, the business needs are X and Y, they want Z skills, but the Z skills aren't necessarily available and coming through. So there's that connection, and that's the importance, I think, of working with businesses, not only at the kind of Berkshire wide level, but you'll see this in our own skills strategy that will be coming to the other overview and scrutiny committee and corporate, it escaped me, as the year progresses, which is really trying to get under the skin of the skills side, as you say, whether that's over 50s or whether that's younger people or NEETs, for example, so those not in education or training, and really trying to find a way through, a pathway through for that. So our focus is on that. It is, without kind of wishing to be kind of flippant and using the term, that inclusive growth that we need to tap into. So, we want our own residents to thrive and to access those higher paid jobs and to be skilled up. Not an easy journey, but hopefully what we're doing is supporting that process. It's super complicated as well. It's not just about skills, it's about transport links, how you get to certain places, and that all needs to be part of the systems approach, I think, in terms of helping residents to access those jobs. That helps.
And the other ingredient, of course, is money. If you can get money, that helps you to be able to actually do things on the ground. And one of the things that George was highlighting was this a collaborative bid between the Business Board, University, Prosperity Board, to try and get funding, which would help us actually implement some of these things more effectively. But you've made a really good point, Shahid, that, there are, what is very striking is there are significant numbers of people who are not really, for one reason or another, able to make their full contribution. And if we can actually help them make their full contribution, that's going to benefit all of us. And it's going to benefit the prosperity of this area. And, we need to retain our competitiveness in this area. It's a strong area economically, but it won't remain strong if we don't address some of these constraints and skills shortages. And the mismatch of skills and opportunities is one of those constraints. There are others like affordable housing, transport links, all important to try and address. Otherwise, in the future, Berkshire and the wider Thames Valley will not be making the same level of contribution to the UK economy as it is now.
Sorry, just last point, Mark. You said, I think the reason I say is skills and employment is because it's economy. It's actually affordability makes impacts on other things as well. So if they're financially sound, then they can afford the housing, they can afford the better lifestyle, because they can afford other things as well. So this is like, they said, somebody asked them, what is the biggest problem facing our country's economy, right? End of the day, this is where the base is. So if I strongly believe we get that right, then there'll be ripples, which will have benefit them in other areas as well. That means we need to do less on the other areas because that we've actually covered. So I suppose it's actually addressing the main issue. And that's why I keep on highlighting is somebody's, like saying is, as the saying goes, that if you give somebody a fish, right, you feed them for the day. But if you teach them how to fish, you feed them for life. And actually giving them the skills, we are actually enabling them to stand on their own feet. And that's ultimately what we want. State cannot actually give them handouts all the time, right? That's just one other comment I say about universities as well. I mean, speaking to some from early business school professors as well, there's also, I think, recognition that there's a disconnect between what the universities are producing as students and what the industry needs as well. So and academia is trying to catch up on that. What industry needs is practical skills. If you're an employer, you need somebody who can come actually and solve the problem. Not actually, but the academia, what produces is a lot of theory, but very little practical element. So there's a problem on that angle as well, which, I mean, again, speaking to them, they say, look, we know that, and we're trying to address that, but it's going to take some time to address it fully. But I'm saying this is also issue, obviously, disconnect between the both of them.
On that last point, which obviously I have to come back on, I think what we really want is a system where there is plenty of vocational training, but there's also room for the generalist, the person who studies arts and social sciences, so that they can actually approach things in a problem-solving way. If you train people to think about how you solve problems, you may not have trained them how they do this particular function, but you've trained them in a way that potentially could be much more widely applicable. So we need the balance between the two is my plea. But I think your points were really well made. And I think all of us here, we're in grave danger of breaking out in a terrible rash of agreement. But I think the fundamental point is about enabling people to realise their potential. I think we're all in favour of that.
Thank you. Thank you, Shahid. Caroline.
Thank you. On the 15th of December, you met with Thames Water. I just wonder if there was an update on their investment, seeing I live near the River Loddon.
Yes, indeed. We did meet with Thames Water, and I actually asked the question of them, what faith could we have in their promises about what they were proposing to do, given their financial situation. I'm not sure we got an entirely satisfactory answer. They really were not in a great position to offer great reassurance. I mean, we are working. We have to work with a partner that is clearly in financial difficulties, is not able to deliver all it wants to do. So that is a fundamental problem for us. They did outline a quite ambitious programme, but I'm not sure the resources are available to deliver it. But George will give you a perhaps more cautious officer approach.
No, I kind of wish I could say something different, really, I think, than that, because I think that's the reality of the situation. But I think, again, if you like, the weight of the Prosperity Board, I think, was really helpful in getting Thames Water to come along and to present and to be very open about where their plans are. And now we have got follow-up meetings with them, again, for officers to follow up on those key actions. We use the opportunity to ask particular questions of Thames Water for Wokingham as well. So it's kind of opening up those doors at the right level for us, I think. And I'm sure the Prosperity Board will want an update on progress with Thames Water later in the year as well. So again, it holds us to account, and Thames Water to account, more importantly.
Pauline.
I was just going to come back on the point Shahid made, which I thought was very interesting. If this sort of tripartite or four-part organisation includes Reading University, what are they doing about making their graduates more employable? Because it's a bit worrying if you put somebody through 3 or 4 years of degree and at the end of it nobody wants to employ them. What do they think about? Is it, do they have the same problem, or is it other universities that are providing degrees that nobody wants? And what do they intend to do about it? Also, just to follow on from that, I mean, I don't know whether the amount of apprenticeships is going down, but I always found apprenticeships were a pretty good way of getting people educated and potentially with a degree without having to pay for it, and also into a job where the employer's got some confidence they can do the job as well. So it seems to be a win-win. So I wonder if you've got any comments on that.
I don't know what the University of Reading's figures look like in terms of employment of graduates. All I can say is it isn't always the case that employment prospects are best for those who've got vocational training. Certainly, in my experience in my university and in a history department, very, very high percentage of our graduates got extremely good jobs, well-paid jobs, an enormous variety of occupations. So I still would say that, getting a university degree is a worthwhile experience in terms of training you up for life and training you up to get a good job. But I think your point about apprenticeships was a really good one. I don't believe there is a fall off in the number of apprenticeships. I think apprenticeship is still regarded as a really important plank in what we're trying to achieve. And I completely accept your point. Apprenticeships are often, for many young people, the proper route. They're the best route to getting through to a good job and better prospects in life. And I think as always, we just got to try and get a balance between all these different elements. There's no one right course for all young people. There's a variety of different courses.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, we used to employ quite a lot of lawyers as IT people because you've got the right logical thought processes. We'd take people with science degrees, geography or law into IT because it fits the aptitude. And it's more about aptitude than subject knowledge in my view. But I'm a bit worried about what Shahid said. And I'm just wondering what Reading University... It'd be interesting to hear what Reading University's take on it is, because it might also be unrealistic expectations from the graduates that think you've done a degree in medieval history, so you want a job in medieval history. Now, I did a zoology degree. I wasn't going to get a job in zoology. I didn't want a job in zoology. But, it's... if you expect something that matches absolutely your degree and you've done a degree that doesn't have very many jobs in it, that might be part of the problem as well.
It could be, although my experience is that most people studying history, my subject, didn't go off to try and teach history or become university teachers in history. They indeed, a very small market, and they were very, very much encouraged to think that this was a training of the mind that you should apply to anything you want to work in. It wouldn't be academic connected necessarily. It could be business, it could be administration, it could be finance. The famous one was law. Most historians went off to study law.
Oh, interesting.
They wanted the money, I think, basically.
Well, and interestingly, then we employed them as IT people. Potentially.
You probably don't employ many of these as IT people.
Possibly not. But it'd be interesting just to get, at some point, if you get a chance, to get Reading's view on it, because I think it's an interesting question.
I think it is an interesting point, but you made a really interesting point earlier on as well when you said it may not be Reading. Of course, it may be other universities. And we don't know, on the evidence we've got, where this problem comes from and what institutions people are coming out of that are struggling.
More data required.
Andy.
I was just going to come back briefly about some of the housing stuff, and there's lots of mention of collaboration and things like that. I was just wondering actually what that will actually look like, partly for residents in our borough. Is it more of a sort of high level bids for things that will be shared? Maybe the financial side of things will be shared across the borough, but how that look? Because when I'm thinking about housing projects and things like that, it's more like small bits here and there, and I can't imagine we're sharing huge housing developments with Bracknell or something like that. So what would that look like for residents of Wokingham?
Well, I think there are two ways of looking at this, Andrew. The first is, what funding are we able to lever in that we might not have been able to lever in anyway? And that's obviously quite a difficult question to answer because we're having reasonably good success in levering in Homes England money, as I said already. Now, quite a lot of that, a big chunk of it, has gone towards helping us with Gorse Ride, which is our flagship housing project in Finch-Hampstead. But it's not just gone into that, it's gone into other things too. And obviously, Homes England have an appetite to fund the delivery of more affordable housing. And they'll work basically with whoever they think is best placed to do that. But their general rule of thumb is collaborative bids from a multiplicity of councils rather than one council will be more favoured than bids from one council. And where they're really giving the big money is to mayoral strategic authorities. That is where they regard the main benefit is coming in terms of the delivery of affordable housing. But we had a really interesting conversation with Homes England recently about how we could bid for money to help us to acquire land so we could actually grow our own HRA, our housing revenue account. We could deliver more council housing in Old Language, which has been an ambition of mine for a long time. I think it's needed in the borough. We're constantly losing some to the right to buy. We have to keep expanding in order to maintain the financial viability of the HRA. But I would like to go a bit beyond just incremental expansion and add a little bit more at scale. So Homes England is probably the only body that can help us with that ambition. So engaging with it and across Berkshire, engaging with it is the right thing to do, I think. George can add a lot more helpful stuff than I can.
Well, I think that's the prize, and I think that's the key prize as well. But there's, whilst that, we've got our full eyes on that, there are other kind of work streams around where is there best practice among the Berkshire councils, and indeed looking elsewhere for best practice in terms of delivery of housing, innovative ways of delivery, and then exploiting those and finding those as a group has been really helpful in sharing best practice. It's also opened up other doors for us. So, for example, in the coming months, I hope we'll have a bit of a peer review on the capacity within our HRA to make the best use of the asset. So whether that's old garage sites or bits of land or densification in some areas, but a kind of health check on where we are with that and where we could go in terms of improving our capacity and skill set on there. And again, that's as a result of those conversations happening with Homes England and doors being kind of opened for us. So hopefully some tangible things on the ground for now, really, whilst we keep our eye on that bigger prize, as you say, through the MSA.
Thank you.
Sorry, just to come back on that. I mean, we've been developing garage sites for 5-6 years. This is not new. Neither is developing council housing. It's something that we've all wanted to do over multiple different political parties. So I don't think we need to learn from other joint strategic authorities about this. We've got the knowledge in the council to do this. We may have lost focus on it. We need to focus back on it.
I think you're absolutely right that developing garage sites has been going on a long time. You're quite right. But my point was really that it's actually by working through the Berkshire Prosperity Board that we're opening doors at Homes England that weren't as open to us as they now are. And a collateral benefit is that we, here in Wokingham, are gaining greater traction with Homes England because doors are being opened to us at a level in Homes England that we might have aspired to get to before but haven't succeeded.
I mean, that's a different point. I wasn't addressing that point. I was addressing all the things that George said that he was learning from other authorities we did here 5 years ago. So we should probably look at learning from ourselves and remembering what we've done before.
It's a valid point. And, that partnership, collaboration, of course, you learn from others and people learn from you as well. That's the whole point of a collaboration and partnership. So you're getting, you're sharing those skills, those experiences, what went well, what could have gone better. And you're seeing that as a group. So absolutely, we've got a lot to contribute to that conversation, without doubt.
Yeah, I'm just worried that we're essentially reinventing the wheel, learning from other people that might have learnt from us in the first place. That's the point I'm making, and also the fact that we've done most of these things jointly with other councils, without any mayoral authorities or without anything like that. It's perfectly possible, as we showed with RE3, as we showed with Optilis, as we showed with many things, to work with individual partner councils very effectively. I think the interesting point is the one Stephen's making about being able to unlock money out of Homes England that we might not be able to unlock otherwise. I'd be very interested to see that quantified.
Well, we can't quantify it until we get it. Then we'll be able to count it happily. But you're right that of course you can have collaboration on lots of different levels. You can have multilateral, bilateral collaborations with individual or groups of councils, which we do already and have done for a long time. I think this is moving a bit farther than that. It's actually helping us lever in those kind of, or rather opening those doors with Homes England that we wouldn't have been able to open before. And that aspiration that is common across the council to deliver more housing in the HRA, more council housing, we've all had that aspiration. Actually delivering it has proved to be the difficulty. And Homes England money is, in realistic terms, the only way we're going to make that financially possible.
Yeah, I think we should be using the housing companies more and wider.
Well, you'll be relieved to know that we are trying to get more buildings, or rather more affordable housing through Loddon Homes. Loddon Homes is quite well placed in the current circumstances because a lot of registered providers, housing associations, have held off from bidding for 106 sites. In other words, a contribution on market housing developments, because they're focused on meeting new regulatory requirements on the quality of their existing stock and resident satisfaction measures. That's diverted all their resource to that. So they've been reluctant to bid for new sites. And in that, that's bad news for us in many ways, but it's got a silver lining because it's provided an opportunity for Loddon Homes, and they have taken advantage of that. One of the schemes in my own ward, in Twyford, is going to be delivered through Loddon Homes. So I'm very pleased with that. We can kind of mix and match and have both.
Shahid.
Sorry, I just want to go back to the previous point, if I may, and Pauline was talking about the data itself. Just looking at some of the, the more and more students are looking at alternative universities. So the university numbers dropped. You see, I've got some old figures here from 22 to 23 by 2%. And the trend, the latest one, is actually declining because, think about, Stephen, is when we probably got to university, right? Everything was free, paid by the state. Now students come out with 50, 60,000 pound debt. That is a huge burden to start a life with, right? And a lot of people are saying that, what is it all worth it? And is university, actually going to university, is a big question mark now. You probably saw a BBC report, I think 3 days ago, 3 A-level A-star students in London actually started doing taxi driving. Said, I don't want to go to university. That was his decision. But the thing is, that was financially, so I can get sort of income coming in within a few months, as opposed to doing 3 years of degree and still no certainty of getting a job as well, and plus 60,000 pound debt at least, right, in the cases. So yeah, definitely there's a decline, they're saying, in people going to universities. But nevertheless, and also the other thing to bear in mind is, I know this is a side issue, but some universities are financially becoming unviable as institutions, and they're only relying on the foreign student fees. If the foreign students did not actually go to those universities, actually they'll go bankrupt. So there's it's a very complex issue anyway. But coming back to the skills side, I'm saying the trend is that question, big mark, whether is the university the right place. I totally agree with you. I still feel there's a huge value in going to university. I agree with you because it's not about particular skills. It's lots of skills, problem solving, critical thinking, creativity. There's a lot of other skills which gives you to solve bigger problems. It doesn't matter what the domain might be.
Well, you're right. I'm sure there has been a slight decline, and that may well continue because obviously we're in a different world now. when I went to university, 12% of school leavers went to university. Now, around 50% go. It's completely different experience. It's a different set of purposes. And it inevitably leads to people at the margins of the new system wondering whether this is really such a great idea for them. Because the expansion is so great that inevitably there will be some people thinking, well, actually, what am I going to get that has added much to my employability? But I think, you know, for those who are academically inclined, it is a good way forward. For those who are not academically inclined, university may certainly not be the best way forward, and it may be better to think about other ways of making yourself employable. And this comes back to the apprenticeship route that Pauline was mentioning earlier. So I think it's tailoring the route that people take according to their own academic inclinations, their own temperaments. I've met many, many young people who are incredibly intelligent but haven't got the application to work for 3 years on a university degree. And you know, it's probably a cruelty to ask them to do it. So you have to think about a whole range of things when you're advising young people on what the best route in life is.
Caroline, and then...
Sorry, I'm going off on a different tenor here. You've mentioned net zero. So how's the Prosperity Board helping us all reach net zero? Thank you.
Well, that's a work stream that's being led by Bracknell Forest Borough Council, I think, isn't it, Mary?
Oh, it's probably, yes, with
Working with the Royal Borough, the officers in the Royal Borough, but the political and corporate leadership coming from Bracknell Forest. I think, again, the aim is to try and, well, George can tell you a bit more about this than I can. He's been working on it, so it's probably better for me to not go beyond my competence.
So I think key issues are around adaptation and planning for the future. So as simply put, are we in the best place if temperatures are increasing, you know, hotter summers? Have we got our play areas in a way that there's shade and protection for those, you know, so that kind of tolerance for climate change. So working on adaptation plans for Berkshire. I think the key issue, and it is absolutely related to climate change, is the adoption of the local nature strategy, recovery strategy. So that's been led by the Royal Borough, but across Berkshire, it was presented to the Prosperity Board earlier in 25, and of course, you know, why I'm raising it as a climate issue is that climate, biodiversity, nature protection is all absolutely linked. And if you were at the climate ONS last week, you would have heard that connection being made in terms of biodiversity, nature, and climate.
Thank you. I just want to hear it goes across the whole of Berkshire. Thank you.
Pauline. It's always interesting to see this. I have a particular fondness for this because it's obviously the body that took over from the LEP, of which I was involved with for many years. I think there's one small footnote in here, which is the end of the digital infrastructure group, which was a particular pet project of mine back in the day. And there are a lot of people. It's a great example of how these schemes worked across Berkshire. I mean, there's a lot of people who have broadband accelerated in the not spots, mostly in kind of West Berkshire, more the rural parts. But that particular group and the Superfast project was a national benchmark for how to do infrastructure for broadband. So I'm kind of happy, sad to see that it's being wound up, because it was a great body, but also it reflects the fact that it's moved on. So yeah.
If I remember rightly, and do correct me if I'm wrong, George, the residual monies attached to that have come into the coffers of the Prosperity Board, so that's helping to fund some of our other projects.
And I think there's a keenness still for officers to work across Berkshire on digital infrastructure as well, so we don't lose sight of that good work. So the project has, I think, come to an end, but I think our work continues as officers on that front, because it's so important from a business point of view.
We're all immensely grateful for the work you do.
remember very
Can
long.
I come back after all?
Go on, Pauline.
Thank you. Sorry. If you're going to continue doing digital, can somebody please have a look at the quality of mobile phone coverage in this borough? It is getting worse and worse and worse and worse, both data and voice. There is something going badly wrong. I think it might be not enough capacity and too much demand rather than anything like that. But if somebody could have a look at that, it's slipping badly behind. And I mean, I know Mark thinks that the digital LEP thing was good. It was far too damn slow as far as I was concerned. And then when it did deliver, the data speed wasn't fast enough either. But
that was the wider issue of being forced to go to super fast rather.
Well, it
than
wasn't
full
super
fibre.
fast, was it?
No,
It was super slow.
It was going to the 30 meg standard rather than the full gig Ethernet.
Yeah, or indeed,
which is what we all wanted. But
precisely.
Anyway, it's interesting
sorry.
you mentioned about the mobile phone coverage. It's obviously in my day-to-day job, we do a lot of work around global networks, and there is a huge shift in a lot of companies now looking more towards satellite connectivity as well. I know two of the local large mobile phone companies in this area are both launching LEO-based calling services next year. But I agree. I think, I was on a briefing call on my drive in this evening, and in all the years I've lived here, the network coverage as you drive up from Farnborough to here, there are still massive not spots everywhere else and still swathes of the area without it. So I do agree. I'm not sure there's much we can do other than lobby and push the network providers, especially when you get people who want 5G masts and want 5G coverage, and then when 5G applications come in, object to it.
Beware of satellite, though. I once put a mobile network into India. It's all very well, you've got this nice satellite network, but you've still got the endpoints.
Absolutely.
And if they're microwave, they get knocked out by the monsoons. And if they're mobile, they're still constricted by the mobile network.
I'll let you know how I get on when I move to a satellite phone next year.
Oh, interesting.
Any more questions on this? Sorry, Stephen.
Not a question, but a comment. What joy it is to come to an overview and scrutiny committee, because here we are, we've had a conversation this evening that's covered an enormously wide range of subjects. Maybe it's because we've got nothing else substantial on the agenda, but who would have thought the Berkshire Prosperity Board item would engage us in a discussion about skills, unemployment, universities, climate change, housing, all of this, and finally digital networks. Yeah, net zero. So it is at overview and scrutiny that we get the chance to have these conversations, which could be very useful.
But seriously, if somebody could actually do something about... Thank you.
Right, I'm going to move us on, and I apologise for all the coughing and spluttering from this side of the table, but the LEMSIPs don't appear to be working anymore. We're going to move on to the next item, so note the updates from that, and we're going to look at the next item, which is the development of the overview and scrutiny work programmes for 26-27. Who am I looking at for?
What happened to the KPIs? Did I miss it?
Yes, you did.
In 10 minutes?
Yep.
That's because I wasn't here.
Yep.
Sorry, I all blame the enormous amount of potholes and roadworks between Barkham and anyway.
And that item has gone. We've gone through that.
It's all right, I'm not trying to drag you back.
And the next one will be in March in the new format as well,
all right.
which is the other key thing. Right, feel free to leave.
10 minutes early for that.
It's 7 minutes to 8 o'clock, so we're now looking at development of overview and scrutiny work programmes for 26-27. There's a couple of recommendations on here. Luciana, is this with you? Are you going to say anything to this with Neil not being here, or is this?
Well, I think it's very self-explanatory, unless people have any questions.
Alison.
Okay, what leapt out at me was that recommendation 3, and then through a document, councillors be invited to submit suggestions for items. Now, in the past, we've always invited residents, and we have invited town and parish councils also. And as people who've been on this committee for a while will know, we do get lots of items which might not be suitable, they're very local or whatever, but we offer that opportunity, and I think it's essential to continue doing that.
I was going to make the same point that I think item 3 needs to be amended to what it was before, which is, or a new one to make sure that we're including residents and the town and parish councils, because as you say, we've always had that feedback. So I think we need to do what we've done before and publish the items, or publish this as an item for public to comment on, but also to communicate with all the town and parish councils, to invite them again to put forward their excellent ideas, so that we can kind of collate all of those together. I know we have the question time on here, but we need to make sure that all of their input is in and we can group them together. So I'm not sure whether we just need to amend that or add a new one, but whichever is the way you want to do it, I'll support that.
I think I'd amend it, and I think perhaps we need to do more to explain that they can't be local issues. It can't, early town council can't put forward something that's only relevant to early. We need to be looking at things that are a higher level across the borough. But I'm sure that they are going to have suggestions that would be worthwhile considering.
So if we amend 3, to include residents and town and parish councils as well, and if everyone is happy with that amendment, any other questions that people want to raise on here? No? Okay, thank you very much. And then in which case we'll move on to the next item, which confusingly is item 64. We are moving on to the consideration of the current executive forward programme, which I think takes us through till the end of March. Any questions that come from that? Alison.
Okay, so looking at the column that shows which ONS meeting had the opportunity to have scrutiny of this, could I just check with you, Andrew? Did the early years strategy, did that go through scrutiny?
Yes, yesterday.
Oh, okay, because that hasn't been marked in the column.
Well, it's called the Best Start in Life strategy now, but yes.
It's just that at the time of publication, that meeting hadn't taken place.
Sorry, I didn't quite understand that.
When this agenda was published, the meeting that looked at it hadn't taken place yet. That meeting only happened yesterday, but Andrew's right, the strategy changed the title to Best Start in Life.
Well, I think we'd be happy if it showed the scrutiny meeting that it was going to, because we're being given the February, March forward programme. So I think we'd like to see on there that there was an intention that it's on the agenda of a scrutiny committee.
I think that's actually what we previously requested before, that date is when it's going to, or whether it's come. I think it was one question was around, has it moved from a previous, it was more about the work programs of the committee, but we'd always said about having what meeting is it going to, so we can double check that it is coming to us. So I think if we can make sure for future meetings that executive forward program does have those items in there, the dates items in there.
It's giving us assurance, isn't it, that ONS has been given or will be given the opportunity.
Yeah, I agree. Anything else on this item? Pauline.
I'm not sure it's on this item or not, but one thing I'm a little bit worried about is the decisions that get made that don't come to scrutiny because nobody realises they're significant and then blow up in everybody's face. So there's been a few of those recently. The latest one is the removal of the rehabilitation exercise service, which would have come to scrutiny if they'd realised how significant it was, but didn't come to scrutiny because somebody misunderstood how significant it was, and actually became an officer decision, I think, because somebody didn't realise how significant it was and didn't have any consultation either. I've been asking Andrew to explain to me what the governance process is for deciding whether things are officer decisions or whether they're executive IEMDs or whether they're executive or whether they're a council. I think the top end of that's quite clear. The bottom end is not at all clear. And also where that data is stored and what scrutiny there is in whoever makes that decision, because somebody made that decision that change wasn't significant and it blatantly was. I wonder whether either we could scrutinise that process or whether that fits in this previous conversation. I wasn't quite sure where it fits, but I'd welcome some more scrutiny on our governance processes?
I kind of wonder whether actually that's a item that we'll want to include in the development of the overview and scrutiny work programme itself.
think
Wherever it sits, I would agree, and also it would be useful to have.
And it's not the first time.
No, and I think also it'd be useful just to remind members of the various scrutiny committees how those processes, that governance process works.
Well, they don't work. That's the problem.
Well,
how they should work.
You know where I'm coming from.
So I think I'm not clear how those decisions are made, who makes that decision, how it's documented, what evidence is considered in order to make that decision. So if we go into the specifics of that decision, the reason they thought it was a trivial decision was they thought only 5 people were involved and they thought they'd all been covered. Turns out 242 people were involved.
I agree.
In between that, we had a number of 70. So somebody made a decision on flawed information. If you'd stepped back and looked at the information the decision was made on, it obviously was incorrect because there were more people giving the training than there were receiving it. And so I'd like to understand, to get away from that specific example, what the process is, what the governance is, who is answerable to the right things being made, decisions being made in the right place, and what evidence is kept.
So it feels to me that what we're needing is an item on a next management or next appropriate, next available management committee on that subject.
I think that would be useful. I think a decision tree or something like that that shows, I've got a decision, let me look at that decision, etc. And where it goes and what the... Because not only is it not clear who makes that decision or why it was made, but I'm not convinced they keep records either of who makes what decisions.
Okay, I think that's a very valid call out. Can we pick that up for...
Yeah, the only thing I was going to add, but I'm sure you know, as well as the executive forward program, the IMD forward program gets published periodically as well. You're thinking
this
member
wasn't an
decisions.
IEMD. This was a decision that was
A member an officer decision.
Well, I'm not sure whether it was an officer decision or a member
Because
decision.
the officer decisions do get recorded.
Yeah.
But I think
let's have it described.
I think let's have an item on a future agenda on that.
Well,
not just that. The whole decision tree on.
So how you decide whether it's an officer decision, an IEMD, an executive decision, or a council decision, the top of it's quite clear.
Yep.
And and who makes that decision, and what evidence is called in order to justify that decision, and where it's stored afterwards,
and how the challenge can work,
and how you challenge it.
Yeah. Without having to go, and it's the challenge of it rather than the invoking call-in, because I think that's a different...
Well, this all started because I tried to call it in and found out it wasn't made properly in the first place.
Yeah. So I think if we can get that added to the next available... Okay.
I think that's the third time it's happened in a year, so there's something wrong there.
I think it's a point well made. I fully support that. Anything else on this item? Alison.
Okay, the Executive Forward Programme for the 19th of March proposes to agree the Council's consultation and engagement strategy. Has that come through review and scrutiny management?
It's due to come back to CCOS. No, we see it before it goes back to... That should be coming to us in... where is it?
It's not on your forward plan, but I would have thought that would come to OS management.
It was on the forward plan, because I think it's an excellent point you raise. It was talked to come back before it goes to executive.
Yes.
And it's not in the CCOS forward plan. It's not been slipped into anywhere else by mistake, and it's not coming to the management committee, and it should go to CCOS. So can we have a look into that, Luciana, about what and where that's going to be on our agenda? And if not, it needs to be slotted in for the 2nd of March. Thank you. Anything else? That's a good catch. Okay. So I think that's the forward programme done. Any comments on the rest of this at all? On any of the other items on the agenda? and the action tracker? If not, I think that is the end of this evening's agenda, and in which case I shall call the meeting closed. Thank you very much.
Where was the traffic?